Welcome to Unstoppable at Craig, where we pull back the curtain on what makes healthy workplace cultures click and what happens when people are empowered to expand the boundaries of what is possible. We'll explore the perspectives of employees and leaders who have carte blanche to speak their truths, tell their stories, and unlock uncommon ways of approaching challenges. I am Dr. Jandel Allen Davis, CEO and President of Craig Hospital, a world-renowned rehabilitation hospital that exclusively specializes in the neurorehabilitation and research of patients with spinal cord and brain injury. Join me as we learn from people who love what they do and what happens when fear doesn't stifle innovation. I am so thrilled to have the opportunity to spend time with Mike Hess, who's from the Blind Institute of Technology. He's an old colleague, friend, buddy who I met several years ago, and I remember some of what we talked about around opportunities for employment for people with, in the case we were talking about, who are visually impaired in different ways or had low visibility in terms of vision. And it's been something that not only has stuck with me since our time together, and there have been many times over the years in different settings, in particular, though, in this last 5 years since I came to Craig Hospital, that I've thought about you or your name has come up or I've told folks about you. So it's a real honor and privilege to get to do this together. And I haven't seen you in so many years, so that was fun, too. But what I think would be a great way to start is just to tell us about you and the work you're doing in the world.
Thank you, Jandel. And really, it's my honor, it's my pleasure to be here in person, right? Like with you again. Our conversations have always been enlightening and spirited, and I love talking to, change maker practitioners, right? Like a lot of people talk about being a change maker. However, like the seat that you are currently sitting in is done so by somebody who actually wants to affect change versus just talk about change. But for your listeners, my name is Mike Hess, and I'm executive director and founder at a Colorado-based nonprofit truly making a global difference now called Blind Institute of Technology, BIT. And I've been legally blind or blind my entire life. Started as a youth, legally blind. And at the time, Jandel, I had no idea. And I grew up in a small town, Northeast Ohio. Mm-hmm. And it was first grade that, they send kids down to the nurse's office, I'm suspecting, and you stick your head in some kind of like helmet thing, and the nurse says, what's the color of the closest balloon? And I'm like, no idea. And so the small town optometrist, really small town, go in there. My mom makes an appointment, and the optometrist didn't have powerful enough equipment and said, your son is faking it. Here's a placebo pair of glasses, and keep him 6 feet from the TV. And my mom knew within hours or days that, it was BS. And so next town over, finally Cleveland Clinic, fairly renowned, organization in Northeast Ohio. They did some experimental procedures on me at the time, and this is in the 70s. And, the doctor comes out to the waiting room and says, your son's got the earliest onset of macular degeneration that we've ever seen. It was a misdiagnosis, but the idea of a retinal degenerative disease was in play. He says, your son's going to be totally blind by the time he turns 18. And so I look up at my mom, I'm 7 years old, and I said, Mom, what's blind? Yeah. And with the strength of only a mother, only a lioness, she says, it just means you're going to be special.
Yeah. And what's beautiful is even up to that point, in terms of how you'd been included and how you'd been received by those who loved you, that you had no concept of what blindness meant. That's amazing.
The world is not built for people who are blind, visually impaired, and really the broader disability community.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not. And so my mom, literally, I always say, gently nudged, which sometimes was a firm foot to butt. And so, like a mom should. And, and she was there when I clearly fell down. She was there, after I got hit by my first car. Again, the world is not built. It's not designed universally for people with disabilities. And so my mom's always been there, to kind of, gently get me out there, but also pick me up when I needed it.
Talk about your after you left home sorts of days in terms of how you find yourself doing the amazing work you're doing now, which was on a much smaller scale when I met you. When you were talking global, when we met a few weeks ago, it's like, whoa.
Timing is, I mean, you know this, Jandale. Timing is so, like, it just seems to happen when it happens, and sometimes it's the perfect timing. So shortly after high school, I was at a local community college here in the Denver metro area, and my access teacher had told me about a program. So this is early 90s. So right after the Americans with Disabilities Act passed in July of 1990,
Yeah.
IBM sent out grant dollars to a handful of community colleges across the country. And one of those community colleges just happened to be the Community College of Denver. And the program was called Computer Training for People with Disabilities. And that program was exactly what it sounded like. And I had no idea what a computer programmer was, but I was engaged to my now wife, and she was married prior. So I was married to a ready-made family. And so
You had some work to do.
I had some work to do. And I said, so how much does a computer programmer make? Like, I was like,
That's right.
I was motivated by the Benjamins, you know, and fortunately I had aptitude for logic. And it was a pretty intensive program, 56 credit hours in 3 semesters.
Wow.
But that was my entree into tech. And so I worked 20 years in the private industry, you know, as a computer programmer, got other Cisco certs and that sort of thing. So, you know, I always spoke tech, and I was pretty good at tech. But one thing was just always evident to me, that I was always the token blind person. But quite honestly, Jandale, it wasn't just blindness. Like, with my cane, I never bumped into anybody in a wheelchair. Never heard of anybody using sign language as their primary means of communication. And neurodiversity was absolutely not talked about. Now, clearly in tech, I worked around people who are neurodivergent. However, it's this taboo conversation. And so after, 20 years, I started doing some digging about, like, okay, well, who's addressing this lack of representation? And there's a lot of great nonprofits across the country, across the globe, that are doing advocacy and education work, but I couldn't find any of them that are addressing the unemployment epidemic.
Talk about that unemployment, because that was one of the startling things that when we first talked by phone, I believe, back in the day.
They actually say that 1 in 5 Americans identify with some sort of disability. Now think about that because they also, chronic disease is considered debilitating, invisible or non-apparent, right? So if you think about, depression, anxiety, right? And in today's day and age, I mean, even post-pandemic, who isn't at least temporarily, incapacitated by anxiety and depression, right? Another presidential year, and oh my God, it's going to, like, all of that affects us as human beings. And so disability is a lot more pervasive than it's not just the sensory, right? Like, so it's easy to see because I have a cane or a service dog, or somebody's in a wheelchair, or somebody with a limb difference who's got a prosthetic, right? Those are kind of the easy visual things. Or if you see somebody signing with sign language, those are the easy ones to kind of identify. But the largest group is actually the invisible or non-apparent.
Yeah.
It's interesting, spending, again, 20 years in corporate. Every year, Jandale, like, there would always be sexual harassment training every single year. I never had any kind of disability orientation training, and in corporate America, we have this other kind of obstacle that no other inclusion demographic has to overcome, which is reasonable accommodation. And most HR representatives, they're not truly qualified to understand what reasonable accommodations are, right? And so you add up all of these, like, okay, so the topic of disability is never talked about. It makes people feel a little uncomfortable. And then you have this reasonable accommodation legislation and regulations, and voila, you have this unemployment, number that is...
It's staggering.
It's staggering.
In my view, it's such wasted potential. And I want to get into that in a little bit, but I want to go back to Blind Institute. So you're activated, you are ready to do something different after 20 years of experiencing and sensing what wasn't going on in the workforce.
Yeah, and so I left my 6-figure income 11 and a half years ago now, single family income, right? So the support, again, go back, my wife, my biggest cheerleader, the strength of a lioness, who was there she's like, I'm here, I support you. I believe in what you want to create, and so Blind Institute of Technology, or BIT, and again, the technologist that I am, I took the binary bit, which is a 0 and 1, and created the acronym Blind Institute of Technology. But I truly believe technology is the greatest equalizer, right? From the Wright brothers to the pencil. Technology's always been there to help humanity overcome its obstacles. And in the digital age, technology is absolutely essential for somebody like me, but other people with disabilities to have a quality of life, let alone their own ability to earn their nickel, right? So that's what BIT, and I started BIT with, it's all about employment.
Yes.
So, we actually, what's unique about us as a nonprofit is our business model. We act as a nonprofit staffing agency.
Amazing.
Yeah. And so there are brands, super fun brands from JP Morgan Chase to CVS, Allstate, Salesforce, DaVita Healthcare, here locally, First Bank, Elevations Credit Union. They pay us to find them talent within the professionals with disabilities community to support their inclusion efforts around people with disabilities.
And it speaks volumes about them. As you were saying, some of those, certainly the local brands that are also national, let's face it. I see their leaders and friends with some of their leaders or know them. And I just want to say thank you to you all out there who knew there's something there. Because frankly, we're wasting talent and we can no longer afford to do it, is my belief. And you're making a difference.
And I started this as a nonprofit, though, because quite honestly, I wanted the mission to be able to open up doors. Right? Like I needed, because there are a lot of leaders like yourself, again, change makers who want to make a difference versus, like I'm coming in just to make a dime.
Yeah.
Right. And so leveraging, the mission to open up these doors for us. And we do keep track. So we've actually, from an employment perspective, over 11 years, it's over 300 individuals that we've gotten people placed. And what placement looks like is just like a lot of other organizations. Some of them are just project based. Some of them are part-time hires. Some of them are full-time hires. Some of them just staff aug, right? They bring us in on a contingency basis. So we make it as simple as we can for any organization who just says, you know what, we want to dip our toe into that BIT pond.
Yeah.
Most organizations, and again, I say most because Craig is uniquely, Craig is, Craig is a unique situation because it's all about disability, right?
And getting people back to living their best lives.
Yeah, exactly. And so, however, most organizations, it's not a topic. And so coming in with organizational development training that helps. And we literally have like a kind of a step 1, step 2, step 3. We have this tiered training to help organizations start to feel much more comfortable and I dare say confident with this very squishy, right, conversation around disability. So we literally have trainings for an organization to feel more confident, right, ultimately. And then when we get people in there, then it's we don't want to just do one and done. We want to cultivate that relationship, right? And so I love being a nonprofit because it's all about relationships. Ultimately, I'm in sales, but I don't know anything about sales, Jandel, but relationships, it's just, it's caring about what you're aiming to do as a leader. And is there a way that we can help?
Our job here is that we are focused on independence. And at the core of it, there's a lot of components to independence, but one for sure is financial and economic independence and the ability to be self-sufficient that way. And jobs are a part of that. When you are visually impaired or blind, there's a heightening of other senses that are used that we who can see may not be necessarily, despite seeing, we can be completely missing in terms of interactions with people. Can you talk about that?
So there's kind of a myth your ears must be so much better. And I'm like, yeah, ask my wife.
Yeah, right.
So full disclosure, I'm still a dude. I have very selective hearing at times, right? So joking aside, it's about focus. And there's so much, the brain, the neuroscientists, they're able to prove it's not necessarily you've got heightened senses because you're blind. It's actually because of focus. So I'm forced to focus clearly. And I always say I am a really good technologist, and it's because of my blindness. So when I'm talking to, the business, because, business requirements come down, it's the business who has purse strings. So they've got the budget to say, we want this to be done with our technology. Like my projects that I managed were always on time and on budget. And really I think, again, I go back to, it was because I was focused on what they were asking. And then I was asking questions. So I wasn't visually distracted, right? With everything else, all the other stuff that's going on in the room and everything. Like I'm laser focused, right? Even though I'm not, looking at you, I am focused on you because I don't have any other visual, I'm not like, oh, squirrel, I don't have that, Jandel. Yeah. And so there have been times we've sent talent to, employers and I'll have, the employer reach out and they're like, hey, thank you for sending, the person with the pink hair to us. And I'm like, huh? And they're like, oh, wait. And yeah, sorry. Do you mean so-and-so? And they're like, oh yeah, you wouldn't know. And I'm like, so if you extrapolate that,
wow,
like how much of the hiring process is determined based on somebody's visual appearance?
It's bias.
It is. Thank you, Jandel. And it's color of skin, what a bling, tattoos, what they're wearing, cultural differences. Like, and here's the thing, I don't see any of that. Like, quite honestly, like what an advantage I have during the hiring process because I'm really focused on what the content that's coming out of somebody's mouth and the skills that they're displaying.
Wow. And so the people that you end up placing, what's the success rate? What's the retention rate?
We're killing it on that.
Yeah.
We have statistics. So our medium salary that people are getting hired in is more than $60K a year, which is, again, so we're focused on, solid, not, business, back office, business oriented skills. And after 5 years of employment, 63% have been promoted at least once and an average salary after 5 years of more than $140K.
Oh my goodness.
So they're not just there, they're killing it.
Well, if there was anything that should help folks lean into this and start thinking about this differently, it's exactly what you just said, because that's economic self-sufficiency on steroids. If you stop to think about those
100%.
Those kind of measures, it's interesting that the work of living alongside a disability, it can seem as if it falls to the person. But one thing that I've said about, equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility, because we are very clear about the A here at Craig and continue to talk about it more in community, as much as possible in community, there's work for the employer to do. How do we create inclusive workplaces that respect difference? And one of them is this whole topic of reasonable accommodations. You've already used that word once in our interview today, but how do you think about it, and how do you work alongside employers to talk about what's a reasonable accommodation?
Sure. Yeah. And what are kind of our step 2 in our trainings? We call it empowerment training. So please forgive me. I don't like the term disability etiquette. Like I don't care.
I don't think I've ever heard that.
I don't need somebody to be polite to me, Jandel. Like I need organizations to understand. Like I can absolutely deliver at a high level if right, you have this open mind around the technology. So technology. It is how people with disabilities are going to be successful. And so when you talk about the technology component, that means you got to have a mindset inside the organization of just realizing like, okay, so think about this from an anxiety perspective. Like there's apps on your smart devices now that keep track of your heart rate and everything else. So if you're having an anxiety attack, right? Your app, like so technology. So it's not just a blindness thing, right? We know this for if you've got diabetes, right? Like there's there all these technologies that aren't. It's not just for blind people, but for an organization to realize like, oh, so technology is the reasonable accommodation. So if we go to that extreme, right? So it doesn't matter if it's blindness or if it's deafness, right? With closed captioning, all that sort of thing. Or if it's, chronic diseases, that's like, so technology is the reasonable accommodation. What do we not expect technology to help us with, right? Because technology is like, it's everywhere.
It is.
Right.
It
and
is.
so for organizations just to realize like, oh, so technology is the solution. Yeah, technology is the solution, but we need leadership to just acknowledge that, right? And start to be like, almost take this like a little bit of a breath and be like, oh, okay, I get it. So technology is the solution. Because then when leaders start thinking of me as somebody who's blind, that technology is the solution, they're like, oh yeah, we use technology for everything.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because here at Craig, we actually have an assistive technology lab.
Oh,
I mean, that
love
we
it.
didn't like, and the reality is the ability to do this is super recent when you consider 11 years ago when you started the Blind Institute of Technology relative to what these little things called smartphones
Yeah.
can do these days. What eye gaze technology can do for someone who's unable to express themselves vocally. The ability of devices now to open doors, to make your home smart.
Smart homes, yep.
We as employers have work to do around what it means to work alongside people and have truly an organization that's built on a framework of inclusion and belonging, and let technology be part of that. But aren't there other parts?
So the big, hairy, monster in the room is bias is for real. Like I tell people all the time, I'm blind, not dead. I can feel, so my wife, for example, she brought me into the building today, right?
Mm-hmm.
Generally speaking, so when my wife is like, acting as my Sherpa at that point, like people they'll talk. So even though I'm asking the question, again, I can hear that they're answering my wife, not me.
Yeah.
Because there's this uncomfortableness around disability, and I can feel that as a blind person. We bring training into organizations. We call it empowerment. It's not disability etiquette. It's empower. We want to empower organizations, leaders to feel more confident around this. Because if we think about this, Jandel, disability is part of the human condition. If we're so lucky to live to be 90 or in our centenarian ages, like
we're going to have some disabilities.
Yeah, Father Time is undefeated, right?
Yeah.
Our cognitive is going to diminish.
It will.
Our motor skills are going to diminish.
They will.
Right? Our sight is going to diminish. Our hearing, so disability is part of the human condition, and yet we're terrified to talk about it.
The interesting thing about what you're bringing up is the cultural elements needed to support an inclusive workplace where people feel like they belong,
And that's
regardless
leadership.
of ability.
Yeah.
So that's leadership.
That's leadership, and that's again.
Talk about that.
It's you. It's Jandel. It's leaders like you who and call it like 8-9 years ago when we first were talking. The organization you were previously in, even though you were in your level, and I think you were a vice president or something at the time.
Yeah.
Like you wanted to make things happen for BIT, even at that time. You were shackled, you were hamstrung, you were incapable, you were unable to do this because of the lack of initiative or intention from your leadership. So again, I love ERG, BRG, so employment resource groups, business resource groups. These are all great to feel, belonging and all that kind of stuff. However, no initiative is going to take off and be supported without leadership saying, we're going to do this.
Do it. Yeah.
And it doesn't mean like we're spending millions and millions of dollars. No. Our training is ridiculously cheap. Again, we're a nonprofit. Our staffing costs are ridiculously cheap. It's all about so again, an HR manager is not going to do anything working with us without the initiative for somebody like you.
I feel somewhat compelled to say this isn't an ad for BIT. This is basic relationship.
It's education.
Because what I hear you saying, and this isn't giving away your secret sauce or anything, is that this is doable with will and intention from leadership.
We want to create this feeling, this inclusive feeling with organizations, like to realize, because at the end, our mission as a nonprofit is gainful employment for this community, right? Yeah. There's going to be such a shortage in talent that leaders are going to have to start saying, all right, I looked under that rock. Oh, here's a rock I didn't even know existed. And that it's not like this mystical, place we are. It's just is your environment truly again, think is your website. Now Craig is totally unique, right? But does your website have representation from people of color, people from the relationship orientation differences, people with disabilities, to include people with canes and or using sign language?
I have an opinion about what I'm about to ask you, but of all the disabilities, which ones can be most challenging for employers and why?
So in our trainings, we use Daniel Kahneman, who's a Nobel Prize winning economist. So loss aversion is again, Nobel Prize winning theory, and it has to do with economics. However, when you read his books and you read his material, it's even beyond just economics. And because loss is something that we as human beings have this aversion towards, whether it's economics or otherwise. So if you think about somebody who's in a wheelchair, somebody with a limb difference, right, prosthetic, somebody who's blind or somebody who you can actively see using sign language, right, those visible disabilities, it immediately invokes this loss aversion. So just off the, like my immediate gut feeling. So when people can see that immediate loss aversion will kick in. And so therefore, loss aversion is named because human beings, unless you're a sociopath, you have the ability to feel empathy, right? And so the vast majority of humans can feel empathy. And so if you're able to put yourself in my shoes or in my wheelchair, you immediately are like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I don't know how I would do this. I don't know how I would do that. I don't know. So to me, it's a very psychological experience that's happening. It's an emotional experience that's happening from the visual sense.
But it can be overcome.
Education. Like again, we go back to if people really struggle with, somebody, people of color, that sort of thing, best thing you can do, get a friend that's a person of color. Yeah. And realize that we have more in common as a human race than we have differences.
I think about that and know that from the experience of being here 5.5 years, is that very quickly I both see our patients, our grads, and I stop seeing. I want to see the disability through the lens of all that it brings and how it enriches cultures, enriches our worlds, how it transforms and changes lives. Not always for the better. Nobody wants to come to Craig, but it's amazing what, back to you talked about focus from the perspective of blindness. For those who we serve, we have seen people dig deeper and learn things about themselves that they never thought possible. So there's almost this fullness, this sort of living more fully into who you are. So that's what we get to see. And at the same time, I cease to see, as you call it, the losses. This aversion, what did they lose? And it happens real quickly, and it's because we're surrounded by them.
You've
and
immersed, yeah.
And until we immerse workplaces in folks with disabilities, we'll continue to have this them-us thing. I was going to answer, but now you should ask me the question, because I think it would open up another really interesting turn.
I'm very curious from a leadership perspective, right? So again, CEO of a really unique, special place.
Yes.
Okay, so think back when you first met me and I came in with a cane. So you tell me, what from your perspective.
Well, it didn't bother me. I guess I'm one of those people who's not, I'm not averted or don't have a strong sense of aversion when I see somebody with a disability. So that's just who I am. Maybe some of it's caring for patients for 25 years and getting the opportunity to see people of all shapes, sizes, colors, stripes. But actually, the way I would answer the question in terms of who I think it's most difficult for employers, and I think this is an important thing to have some conversation about, it's actually the unseen disability, and I don't even know that it's a fair word to use, frankly, called neurodiversion. I think that's the toughest one, because this is the stuff that people, it starts in middle school, it starts in grade school, the kid who's different, who gets marginalized, who's shunned, who's bullied.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that workplaces and employers know how to recognize it. And someone said this amazing quote, because this hit me just a few months ago, that, we are surrounded by people who are different this way. And we have workplace policies and rules and all sorts of things that way that may be in conflict or make it difficult for people who are neurodiverse to actually work within the workplace. And someone said, the quote was, "We hire for diversity, we train for conformity." Did you think about that? Whether it's neurodivergence or, whether neurodivergent or who is a wheelchair user or has had a brain injury and has some changes that happen that way in terms of how they navigate the world. What's our requirement? How do we begin to change mindsets of managers and leaders, and how do our policies and all have to change in order to really accommodate this, with the understanding that there's still work to do. And we do have missions and we have purposes. Yeah.
If you're attempting to figure out policies and procedure across the entire organization and trying to figure out, like, okay, can somebody who's got ASD, even high functioning, do every single role in your hospital right now, versus let's find the match, right? Like to me, it's let's find not just you as the leader, right, but also one of your other team members who is equally as passionate about making a success story happen. And it's just being thoughtful. And to me, it's not just Jandel attempting to boil an ocean. It is absolutely like finding the allies like that are on your team. And I promise you have allies on your team.
Oh, I know I do. I've got 1,000 of them.
Yeah. And it's impossible for you to know even though you've been in healthcare your whole life, there's a whole lot of, functions and stuff that are happening that, you probably just, peripheral about what's going on. And I feel like there's, like, you just start 1%, like you're going to find a role that a blind person, a deaf person, somebody with ASD. And here's the beauty about that. So if you can find that one role or that one department here at Craig, you telling me that we can't take that same model to Swedish, to Denver Health, to KP, to Children's Hospital? That's how how you as a leader create systemic change.
Yeah.
It's through 1%.
Yeah. We're seeing more, and it's really been, sometimes I think, do I see it now because of where I work, or is the world changing? And I think it's a bit of both, but for sure the world is changing. We're seeing people who are wheelchair users in advertising and in marketing. There are clothing lines that are moving in that direction. We're seeing some changes happening that way. There are days, especially given my journey as an African-American woman, that the change ain't happening fast enough, but it is happening. So I just love to sit back and listen to you, get a little ministerial and dream. What do you want this world of employment to look like 10 years, 20 years from now? Oof. And I'll get some tissues.
Jandel,
tell me what it looks like. What's not just your institution, but just dream for a bit.
I tell people this, so like I'll never have a bigot cop put his knee on my neck, ever, because I'm Caucasian. Like, I'll never have that, Jandel. But I've had the Fortune 10,000 put their knee on my financial neck my entire life. Like, so the unemployment numbers, like, again, people can twist numbers however they want, but you see the numbers, right? And I stopped asking executives, so how many blind people, how many deaf people do you have working for you? It's a really uncomfortable silence, right? And so for me, like, so I started BIT, I'm like, 10,000. Like, you got to have a goal. You got to have a big, hairy, audacious goal. Let's get 10,000 people with disabilities gainfully employed, right? And if you think about that, that's only one per Fortune 10,000. Like, that is such a low bar to hit. And yet you look at the statistics, that seems like a generation away. Like, in 11 years, we've been able to get 300 plus people placed. I'm so thrilled in the stories, the lives that we've impacted. Because I put my phone number, my email address is on my website. Like, I make myself ridiculously available. And in the stories, and I do this because I work for them. I work for that population that is omitted. Like, it's bad here in the United States. It is horrible everywhere else. And I work for them. And it's just like, I don't ever want to not be available to this community, this amazing community. I don't have enough Jandels in my back pocket to get these amazing people working again. And
so we need more people
we need more Jandels.
So in 20 years, what's it look like if you're successful?
If I'm successful, we've hit our 10,000 in 20 years. But we just, quite honestly, like, if I can get just 1% of your time and introduce me to one other, I mean, just think of the power of that, right? Like, one CEO introducing me to another CEO to like, yes, we can get 10,000 people with disabilities gainfully employed in 20 years.
And we need way more than that.
We need way more than that.
Because that's not going to even solve our workforce shortage
But all of a sudden
issues.
you have a benchmark now.
Yeah.
And you have enough data to support, like, okay, yeah, this is more of a value add than a risk.
Yeah. When you lay your head on the pillow at night, what makes you most proud about what you do and what you accomplished as a leader?
Got so many emails of people who like they're like, you've changed my life. Like it's the people. It's why you're the CEO of this amazing organization. It's the people that we get to touch, and they reach out and and to me, I'm a facilitator. That's all I am, right? Like I facilitate relationships. This relationship with that relationship, and this talented person with this organization looking like. So I just facilitate. That's all I do, right? Yeah. Like, some of these ideas, they're mine, but I didn't, I'm a servant. That's all I am. And I think good leaders are servants, and that's you. Like, you're here to serve and just be that facilitator of making transactions happen at the end of the day. And I'm super proud of that. Yes. And yet I'm like, I haven't done enough. The statistics show I haven't done enough.
Well, to whatever extent the shifts that we're seeing in the market and in the world around, and for whatever reason that it's driven, because sometimes it's by any means necessary, if we can get our workforces, our workplaces strengthened through the power of this level of diversity, then both of us can put our head on the pillow at night and go, well done today.
Yeah.
Well done today. I appreciate your making time.
I so love hearing your voice. I've just loved reconnecting with you again. I'm honored to be here.
Strangers.
Thank you so much for having me, though, Janelle.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. All I can say about the interview that we just did is, wow, there was a moment where I got tearful, as I said, when Mike talked about, I will never have a bigoted cop with a knee on my neck, but I have plenty of folks or organizations or a world that has a knee on my financial potential, I'd say, let alone reality at a given time. The idea of thinking about what is possible in workplaces that's win-win, I'd say win-win-win for institutions, communities, and individuals if we widen the aperture and think about not disability, but actually differently abled, and what is actually born or what arises, what emerges when one finds oneself unable or to do what they used to do, or to do things differently, or who were born into less than fully capable as defined by the, in some ways, narrow ways we think about that as human beings. We need more Mike Hesses. We need more Mike Hesses because we are at a point, we all know, looking at the statistics, where we have no other choice. And thank God for that we have no other choice. Because we will now be, I hope, motivated more than forced to think about widening our aperture around who is able to work within our organizations and what beautiful ways they will enrich the tapestry of our organizations, enrich the tapestry of our purpose, of our missions through doing the little bit. And honestly, it is the little bit that's required to accommodate in reasonable and appropriate fashions those who need extra help in order to help us all achieve the goals we need to. What does this all have to do with leadership and culture, which is what this podcast at the heart of it is about? As I listened to Mike and listened to his story, there were so many things that emerged. First, his mother and how she saw him. How's that for a play on words? As a fully capable human being who didn't realize what blindness was until he was 7. So what had that 7 years been like for him in a way that he saw a place for himself in the world, and he had a mom, he had a champion who did that for him? Where's our leadership courage to be the champions for so many others? I say it takes courage. It takes courage. That's the leadership capacity that I think Mike exemplifies and those he works alongside exemplify. And in turn are not just changing individual lives, but are changing organizational cultures, and in turn are changing and transforming communities. So with that, I want to thank you again for joining us for Unstoppable at Craig. Just know that I feel a special connection to those of you who make the time to listen. And I hope it shifts you just a little bit, if not a big bit. How's that for a play on words?